Words of Sri Aurobindo from the book The Mother, Part 2, Letters on the Mother by Our Lord, Chapter 6, Working of the Mother's Force, page 155. New topic: Safeguards against dangers in descent. Sri Aurobindo says, in this process of the descent from above and the working, it is most important not to rely entirely on oneself, but to rely on the guidance of the Guru and to refer all that happens to his judgment and arbitration and decision. For it often happens that the forces of the lower nature are stimulated and excited by the descent and want to mix with it and turn it to their profit. It often happens too that some power or powers, undivine in their nature, present themselves as the Supreme Lord or as the Divine Mother and claim the being's service and surrender. If these things are accepted, there will be an extremely disastrous consequence. If indeed there is the assent of the sadhak to the divine, working alone, and the submission or surrender to that guidance, then all can go smoothly. This assent and a rejection of all egoistic forces or forces that appeal to the ego are the safeguard through the sadhana. But the ways of nature are full of snares, the disguises of the ego are innumerable, the illusions of the powers of darkness, Rakshasi Maya, are the extraordinarily skillful. The reason is an insufficient guide and often turns traitor. Vital desire is always with us, tempting to follow any alluring call. This is the reason why in this yoga we insist so much on what we call samarpana, rather inadequately rendered by the English word surrender. If the heart center is fully open and the psychic is always in control, then there is no question. All is safe, but the psychic can at any moment be wheeled by a lower upsurge. It is only a few who are exempt from these dangers, and is precisely to those to whom surrender is easily possible. The guidance of one who is himself by identity or represents the divine is in this difficult endeavor imperative and indispensable. Let nothing and nobody come between you and the mother's force. It is on your admitting and keeping that force and responding to the true inspiration and not on any ideas the mind may form that success will depend. Even ideas or plans which might otherwise be useful will fail if there is not behind them the true spirit and the true force and influence. If you want to get back your faith and keep it, you must first quiet your mind and make it open and obedient to the mother's force. If you have an excited mind at the mercy of every influence and impulse, you will remain a field of conflicting and contrary forces and cannot progress. You will begin to listen to your own ignorance instead of the mother's knowledge, and your faith will naturally disappear. And you will get into a wrong condition and a wrong attitude. March 1928. Help of the mother's force for change. It is assumed that you are capable of the change since you are here in the presence and under the protection of the mother. The pressure and help of the mother's force is always there. Your rapidity of progress depends upon your keeping yourself open to it and rejecting calmly, quietly, and steadily all suggestions and invasions of other forces. Especially the nervous excitement of the vital has to be rejected. A calm and quiet strength in the nervous being and the body is the only sound basis. It is there for you to receive if you open to it always. Date 27th August 1932. Do not allow yourself to be troubled or discouraged by any difficulties, but quietly and simply open yourself to the mother's force and allow it to change you. The mother's force is not only above on the summit of the being, it is there with you and near you, ready to act whenever your nature will allow it. It is so with everybody here. Date 15th November 1936. The mother's force may do everything, but one has to become more and more conscious of one's own being and nature and what is below in it. It is not a question of mental judgment that is of little use in these matters, but of the consciousness, feeling, and seeing. Supermind is not organized in the lower planes as the others are. It is only a veiled influence. Otherwise, the supramental realization would be easy. Date 22nd May 1934. You should not rely on anything else alone, however helpful it may seem, but chiefly, primarily, fundamentally on the mother's force. The sun and the light may be a help and will be if it is the true light and the true sun, but cannot take the place of the mother's force. The steadiness you have gained is not a personal virtue, but depends on your keeping the contact with the mother. For it is her force that is behind it and behind all the progress you can make. Learn to rely on that force, to open to it more completely, and to seek spiritual progress, even not for your own sake, but for the sake of the divine. Then you will go more smoothly. They are unable to progress for two reasons. One, because they yield to despair and gloom and the illusion of impotence. Second, because they try only with their own strength and do not care or know how to call in the working of the mother's force. Date 10th June 1936. Next topic, resistance to the mother's force. The illnesses you have are the signs of the resistance of your physical consciousness to the action of the divine power. If you cannot advance in your sadhana, it is because you are divided and do not give yourself without reserve. You speak of surrendering everything to the mother, but you have not done even the one thing which she asked of you and which you have promised more than once. If, after having called the action of the divine force, you allow other influences to prevail, how can you expect to be free from obstruction and difficulties? Date 20th November 1928.